From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
What is going on, security gang? Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast, practitioner brief / cyber news / everything you need to know in under 10 minutes. Joining me today, one of my favorite people on planet Earth, another awesome person with the name of James, Mr. McQuiggan. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Azar. How you doing?
You know, I am doing very well. I'm glad we're matching in black today.
Yeah.
I'm very ecstatic about it. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for coming on such short notice, but you're always kind of that person. So good morning, everyone. It's a good morning, and I say that in parentheses. Obviously, if you've woken up to the news, Russia started a massive scale invasion of the Ukraine, and they've weaponized cyber warfare. As part of that, we're going to be talking about that here leading up to our show. And we've also got we've got another story on encryption that was supposed to be safe in Samsung devices. That was not. And your organization may have trusted it because it was the right place to be, according to Samsung. Unfortunately, that was not the case. It also highlights just how difficult encryption really is, and the management of encryption is quite significant. So we'll be talking about that on today's show. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at KnowBe4. So you can see more about them in the show notes. Please go and check them out and show them a little bit of love. Let them know you heard about them from the CyberHub podcast. We'll get to some shout outs before we get our first sip of coffee. Good morning to Brent, Scott, Chris. Good day, Mr. Williams. Good morning to Mr. Aaron Franks. Good morning to Scott. Loyola, top of the morning to you. David M., good morning. Thank you all for being here. Mr. McQuiggan, Coffee Cup Cheers was your invention, brother. And I would be remiss if I didn't grab my double espresso. And I'm sure, let me guess what you're drinking. A Tim Hortons.
You got it. In my Tim Hortons mug, of course.
In your
Canadian
Tim
coffee.
Hortons mug. I'm gonna have to get you a CyberHub podcast mug.
Hey, that'll be cool. Definitely.
So Coffee Cup Cheers, folks.
Coffee Cup Cheers.
Good morning to Tom. Good morning to Tsa.
Mr. Ryan.
I think that's Tsa Malka. All right, awesome. Great of everyone being here today. CyberHubPodcast.com is where you can find all the latest, all of our great content, including breaking into cybersecurity at 1 p.m. today, CISO Thursdays on Renee Small's page. Ian Amit and Dutch Schwartz will be joining Chris. I will be unfortunately unavailable today, but go check it out. It's a superstar studded show at 1 p.m. today. So
not to be missed.
Definitely not to be missed. All right, Mr. McQuiggan, let's start off with our story here, folks. So hearts go out to the folks in the Ukraine, not just hearts, but fight. I've got great images of the Ukraine shooting down Russian jets, helicopters. They've captured 2 soldiers, stuff you're not hearing about in MSM. There's tanks blown up. I've got all kinds of stuff in my phone that I've gotten from contacts within the Ukraine, showing me the Ukrainians are fighting back, and they're fighting back hard. And there's loss of life on the Russian side, just like there is on the Ukrainian side. I saw at least 10 dead Russian soldiers in the images I've got. Russia launched a full-scale invasion. This invasion started with a DDoS attack on all of the Ukraine, essentially halting all of their government infrastructure as well as their financial infrastructure. There was a cyber attack on their oil pipeline. There's people standing in line in gas stations trying to leave the country who not only cannot pump gas, but the system to process it is done. And some gas stations have gone to manual charging, meaning pay with your hryvnias and move on. Credit cards are not viable. There are ballistic missiles being targeted there. ESET has said that it's detected a previously unseen piece of data wiping malware. We'll talk about that here in just a moment as well. Semantics also seeing a lot of different cyber attacks that are happening against Ukrainian assets and organizations within the entire country. And Russia is not just attacking eastern Ukraine, which was the Donetsk region. They've attacked Kiev, they've attacked Kharkiv, and a lot of the big cities in the Ukraine. And a lot of this has been done through cyber warfare. They've actually they've not only bombed some of the Ukrainian army assets, they've also launched crippling cyber attacks on those. And all of these tools will soon enough be open and available for everyone to see. Mr. McQuiggan, your thoughts on what we're seeing from a cyber warfare perspective?
Yeah, and this is certainly something that's been a long time coming, because we've seen Russia do these actions, all the way back 2007, 2008 with Estonia and Georgia. I remember when that was happening, and then fast forward to 2015, and we've had the Ukraine attacks again with regards to the power plants and everything there. And, you think about regular warfare and they're going after the physical objects of oil and banks, all the finance and everything else. And now, rather than sending missiles, they're sending cyber missiles, the malware at those denial of service attacks and these other destructive malware that's out there as well. So, we've always said whatever happens in the real world happens in the cyber world, and this is certainly no exception. The downside is I'm not sure Ukraine, from what you were sharing with us earlier, it sounds like on the physical attack, Ukraine are starting to hold their own, or they're pushing forward. But from a cyber standpoint, hopefully they can get some good allies in there to help them with those attacks.
Yeah, Ukraine is severely overmatched here, right? Ukraine versus Russia is David versus Goliath, is really what this is. This is a modern day David versus Goliath. Russia is a global power. Let's not forget that the Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons, the only country to ever do that, in 1994, with assurances from us, the US, the UK, and Russia, that they'd have nothing to worry about by giving up their nuclear arsenal. No one will ever attack you. You don't have to worry about a thing. Those assurances are now up the,
they're calling in their card 25 years later.
Exactly. And so keeping this in mind, and I want to highlight this because there's a few things that are going on there, right? So there's this destructive HermeticWiper malware that's targeting computers across Kiev. This specific malware is designed to infect Windows devices. Its name references a digital certificate used to sign the malware sample. The certificate was issued to a Cyprus-based company called Hermetica Digital. Russia uses Cyprus as it's kind of like their offshore, kind of what the Cayman Islands were to a lot of very rich people that tried to evade taxes or sanctions and whatnot. Cyprus, a very small island, very, very heavily reliant on Russia and Chinese money to actually survive. So ESET first reported spotting the HermeticWiper on Wednesday afternoon Ukrainian time, and the company said hundreds of computers have been compromised since then. In what is the secondary piece of this. So what Russia's doing from a cyber warfare perspective what Russia is doing from a cybersecurity perspective here is something very, very interesting. Not only interesting, it's also the evolution of what new warfare is going to look like. And we're going to talk about that impact here in just a moment. But it's the idea of they're not only sending missiles, they're also going after specific legitimate systems within the Ukraine. They're downloading all the data and then they're wiping everything they've downloaded as a way to make it so that it'd be impossible to recover later on. And so so that's really significant, Mr. McQuiggan.
Yeah, when you look at warfare, disrupt, damage, or disrupt, delay, and damage, they've certainly done the disruption. We've seen that with denial of service. Now we're getting the damage with the wiper files, the wiper malware. We've seen that, back with, if I'm getting my Petya's right, the not Petya one that was supposed to look like ransomware, but it was actually the wiper going through and disabling the systems, preventing them from, being able to, restore. Hopefully you got your backups, but you're rebuilding from the ground up. And that's a long enough process already.
It is. The third piece of this is the US and UK have now attributed a new type of botnet called Cyclops Blink that's been attributed to the Russian-backed Sandworm hacking group that's been deployed dating back to 2019. It uses VPN filter malware that was exposed in 2018, which exploited network devices, primarily routers and NOS storage devices, in order to deploy the botnet across the entire system. This warning also comes out today with that. So let's talk a little bit about what this means to us practitioners, folks. A few things. One, time to tighten up ship, because here's what's happening geopolitically that we all need to understand and be able to explain to our board. France, the UK, we'll see what the White House does from a sanction perspective. There's going to be some significant sanctions that are going to be going on against Russia here in the next several days and weeks and months to come. At some point, Russia is going to retaliate back on our economies, targeting our organizations, maybe not you directly, but someone within your supply chain, someone that's going to be critical to that. And at this point, we are going to see significant damage to an already faltering economy that's trying to recover after 2 years of COVID. And the Russians know this just as much. So you want to tighten ship today. Mr. McQuiggan, what are some of the good ways to tighten ship now?
Well, you know me and where I'm coming from, we're always looking at the human. The technology's there, with our firewalls and the email filters and the gateways and everything else. But with regards to stepping up the cyber warfare, if they're going to start targeting the U.S. organizations' supply chains, those organizations need to make sure they've got the human ability, the human aspect of it, make sure folks are educated, are trained, able to spot them. The technology is going to stop a lot of it. It's going to hopefully prevent some of those denial of service attacks, but they're going to be ramping up those phishing, spear phishing campaigns to try and gain access into organizations if, unfortunately, they're not already there. Which we've always said, you've either been breached and you know it, or you've been breached and you don't know it. So
right.
Whether they want to start showing their cards, showing their hand, and showing what kind of exposure they've got inside these organizations, if they do, is going to certainly come to light with regards to this.
Right. So thank you for bringing up the human element. Let's talk a little bit about technology and some of the compensating controls we need to put in place now. One, if you've got any assets, if you're not using multi-factor authentication through an app, multi-factor authentication now is the time to do it through an app, please, not SMS. Please make it right. If you're going to do multi-factor authentication, do it the right way. Do it through an app like a Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator. I would do a password refresh if you can over the weekend. Patch all of your systems. Any known vulnerability, go look at the CISO list of known and exploited vulnerabilities. Identify if you've got any of those within your environment. Patch those right away. Go downstream towards your supply chain. Find any small to mid-sized critical vendors that are part of your organization that could be an easier target to disrupt you by disrupting them, and have a conversation with them over what are they doing to really tighten ship. Because the Russians are not going to just let sanctions come and cripple their economy without fighting back. And they're going to fight back. And it's not going to, and what we're seeing, what they do in the Ukraine is only a sample of what they're going to send out to everyone else. Data wiping malware, going against specific businesses and using this data wiping malware and wiping data completely off an infrastructure, causing businesses to go under, would be significant. Doing that to a critical part of our supply chain would be insane. So you want to be able to address that right away. Additionally, some awareness training now is a good time. Talking about stuff that you see on social media. We're probably going to see a lot of Russian propaganda start to come through all of these social media platforms. So if someone's on the Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you're going to start to see a lot of Russian propaganda there. It's a good time to remind people what to be paying attention to, where to donate money, how to protect themselves, how to verify links. Providing these types of tools right now would be critical. You want to check your DR and BCB plan. You're absolutely right, Aaron. That was next on my list, right? You want to definitely check your business continuity plan. You want to check your IR plan. You want to connect with your IR response team this week or next week. Talk about, hey, are we ready? Schedule a quick tabletop to get something practiced in the event you see something down your supply chain with some of your key vendors. And now is the time to do this. Tomas Maldonado, the CISO of the NFL, right before every Super Bowl, they do a joint tabletop exercise across so many different jurisdictions with all the different vendors to make sure the event goes smoothly. If you watched a Super Bowl and it went smooth, it's because of Tomas and his team at the NFL, right? Now you need to do the same. We are heading into a period of time where we're going to see a lot of nation state activities, and it takes a village to defend it.
Yep.
Anything I missed, Mr. McQuiggan?
I think you pretty well covered all the bases. Definitely, looking at organizing your teams and collaborating with them, because it's the people that's going to keep this all together. Have those conversations. And if you haven't got your plans, start working on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Our final story here before we wrap, folks, is Samsung shattered encryption on over 100 million phones in what one cryptography expert said was the most serious flaw in ways that Samsung phones encrypted sensitive material, and it's embarrassingly bad. So Samsung shipped an estimated 100 million smartphones with botched encryption, including models ranging from the 2017 Galaxy S8 up until last year's S21. How many phones did it release a year? Like, did they go like iPhones? Like, they went from 8 to 21?
With regards,
I'm not a Samsung guy, so I don't know.
I'm not a Samsung. I have a Samsung TV. That's about it.
Yeah, me too. That's about the extent of my usage of Samsung. But if someone can write in the comments to let me know, like, how'd they go from S8 in 2017 to S20? Are they releasing a phone like every 2 months?
I have to look it up.
So researchers at Tel Aviv University found what they called a severe cryptographic design flaw that could have let attackers siphon the device hardware-based cryptographic keys that unlock the treasure trove of security-critical data that's found in smartphone. What more is that the cyber attackers could even exploit the Samsung cryptographic missteps since addressed in multiple CVEs to downgrade a device's security protocol that would set the phone up to be vulnerable to future attacks, a practice known as initialization vector reuse attacks. In a paper, Trust Dies in Darkness, shedding light on Samsung's Trust Zone Keymaster design, Avishai Wool, Eyal Ronen, and Alon Shkevitsky, the academics explained that nowadays smartphones control data that include sensitive messages, images, and file, cryptographic key management, FIDO2 web authentication, and DRM data, and data for mobile payment services like Samsung Pay, and enterprise identity management, which I think is the one we got to look at. Trust Zone was being marketed for years as a way for you to control corporate data on smart devices. Now 100 million devices were shipped where your data could have been exposed and you don't even know about it.
Yeah, exactly. And they have released patches, but I think so hopefully the people have updated their devices and had them patched. But the thing that struck me with this one is the way that they designed the cryptography. Now, I'm no cryptography expert. I know enough to, from my CISSP days and studying and, know enough to be dangerous. But diving deep into this and looking at the initialization vector and just repeating that, not having more randomization involved in it. They basically did what they needed to do to get it out the door, get it out quick, done and fast. And essentially relying on security through obscurity. And we know how well that works.
Yep.
But, from a developer standpoint, we see it all the time. They're pressured. We got to go to market. We got to get this out. Okay, we'll do this. Well, we could do XYZ. Now we don't have time for that, and get it out the door. Organizations always say, hey, we take security seriously. How serious do they take it, and do they take it seriously enough? And something like this certainly is sloppy, especially coming from the comments of the other experts listed in the article. But it's hopefully that's going to be improved, and Apple doesn't have the same thing.
Yeah, I think, James, one thing, Mr. McQuiggan, is cryptography is difficult.
Oh yeah,
it's not easy like people think it is.
Right.
This is just showing you the challenge of even traditional encryption is still a challenge in a lot of cases, and you've really got to follow a good playbook in order to really have solid encryption. Yep. Within your environment. It's
not easy to even try and create your own. That's why it's good to rely on the ones that are out there. Exactly.
Indeed. Yep. Yeah, that's absolutely true, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. We went a little bit longer today, but with Mr. McQuiggan, I can have him on for an hour, and this would still be very, very interesting. To the many of you watching, please go back, listen to what we talked about if you're just tuning in now, around what you need to do to harden your environments, given that Russia will do cyber retaliation against Western organizations. after the sanctions hit here later today. And the more devastating the sanctions will be on Russia, the more likely they are to respond with critical warfare and cyber warfare. So having said that, please take some time, go through the basics, get your foundational security in place before you start looking at bells and whistles to beef things up. That would be ideal. Mr. McQuiggan, any parting words, buddy?
No, just everybody keep an eye on everything that's going on with the news, but also when it comes to, and you touched upon it earlier, the misinformation, disinformation, there's a whole trust and verify that's got to go on. Don't just believe something you read at face value. Make sure you can verify it.
Make sure you talk to your team about it. If you've got anyone in your organization that's a Ukrainian diaspora that's working for you, make sure you reach out to them and make sure their families are doing okay.
Yep.
There's now over 40 confirmed dead. And as we're speaking, I've just got notice that the Russian military has taken over the Boryspil International Airport in Kiev. So they have taken over the airport in Kiev at this time, targeting the capital city of the Ukraine. So mind you, there's going to be some stuff going on there, folks. That's it for us here. We'll be back with a lot more on Monday. Tomorrow, I'll be airing Can I Trust Zero Trust with my good friends from SADA, so go check it out. You don't want to miss it. That's a Friday conversation tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on your favorite podcast listening platform and one of your favorite podcasts, CyberHub Podcast. Make sure to subscribe. Smash the subscribe button while you're at it. Subscribe. And please share and comment. Thank you all for being here and have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.